everyone, it's Katie from URComped with Julia Carcamo, who is the President and Chief Brand Strategist of Carcamo and Associates. She's the author of Real Marketing. She's a casino marketing consultant, as well as a huge marketing leader in the casino realm. Julia, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. And I have to applause you, pronounce my name properly the very first try. So
well, I'm not going to lie, I practiced a little bit. I was like, let me make sure I say this right.
That makes a good host.
Thank you. Well, for those watching, I reached out to you because I wanted to have a deeper discussion about experience marketing within the casino industry, as well as a few other topics because of your expertise. But before we dive into that, tell us a little bit about what you do through Carcamo and Associates.
So with Carcamo and Associates, we do casino marketing consultants. So we work with a variety of casinos across the nation to really sort of help them where they need it most, be it strategy or tactics, sometimes mentorship calls with the team so that we can develop them into stronger, better marketers. And then, of course, most of my time is taken up with Casino Marketing Bootcamp.
Nice. Well, we are going to talk a little bit more about Casino Marketing Bootcamp later, but I'm super excited to hear a little bit more about that. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your experience in the industry and how you got started?
I got started on a very cold and rainy Mardi Gras day. And I love to tell people that my first job in the casino industry lasted all of 10 weeks. I came on board the week before a property opened up, brand new property in the Gulf South, and then it went bankrupt 9 weeks after opening. But there was really something about the experience and the entertainment and just the vibe of the casino space that kind of said that's where I wanted to be, even though most people's experiences would have been horribly bad.
Has there ever been like a sunny, nice Mardi Gras?
Oh yeah, lots of them. That was just a really weird one. Yeah, lots of them. Yeah.
The ones I've been to have been rainy, but that is, that's awesome. Well, I'm glad that it didn't scare you because clearly you've had an incredible career and succeeded in a lot of areas. You also wrote a book, Real Marketing. What would you say inspired you to write the book, as well as what does that book focus on?
So the truth is that I always had this idea of writing a book, a casino marketing book. And then the pandemic came and every single contract I had was canceled. And I thought, what a perfect time. I mean, it really was a great time. I didn't have any other demands on my day. And so I, kind of gave it the old outline a look, and I went in a completely different direction. And I wanted to create something that was really about branding and creating casino brands and how to make them last.
That's awesome. Have you considered writing any more books since then or publishing again?
I have. I've actually had a conversation with somebody about co-authoring a book. But I've also been writing a lot on my own blog, and then I also contribute to publications like GGB. There's been a lot that I've been writing about, and the other day I was thinking, I think that there's a book in here or a volume 2 to Real Marketing. I'm not sure yet, but I think so. Yeah.
Nice. Well, you heard it here first. There might be a sequel. Well, let's get into it. One topic and trend that I'm excited to discuss with you is experience marketing. So how would you explain what experience marketing is to someone and why is it valuable?
So I think that looking at it in terms of casinos, right? So we create events, we create giveaways, and we create VIP events. But I think that there's a real opportunity in creating experiences out of these things. How do we have something that happens at our properties or that we deliver to our guests that is so delightful, that is so enthralling, that it stays in their memory and that they share that memory with others? And hopefully that attracts new customers to us. It really is about creating a connection rather than just a series of here's dinner, here's music, here's dancing, here's your gift, come again. It's really about how do we create an emotional moment in people's hearts.
Definitely. Yeah, like an experience is what casino marketing is all about, because we can't really market our products like our slot games and our table games, because at the end of the day, we all kind of have the same ones.
Right.
And so when it comes down to it, however, like you mentioned before, experiences are more than just events. Can you dive deeper into what guests are looking for when it comes to a unique experience?
Well, I think it's something that they want to know that I think one thing is they want to have an experience that they know they were invited to because they mean something to us. I think it's something that it's not the whole, it's like when you go to a concert, yeah, the concert is great, but there's always that one moment, that one song that just sort of like gets to you, and it is the memory for the whole evening. And I think that that's what guests can't really tell us. I want that memory, but boy, when we create that moment for them, they will tell the world about it. And that's what we want to do. I think it's just, like I said, different than a checklist of logistics and more about how do we make people feel when they're within our walls.
Yeah, that reminds me. So at the 2023 CMTC conference, one of the keynote luncheon speakers, he was discussing trends. So he mentioned impulse buying and online shopping is increasing. Personalized travel experiences, solo travel and workation were up 1000%. And then he mentioned the power of moments and leaving your customers with moments that they can talk about. And he doesn't say events, he says moments. And so you can, like a casino could ask, would a local person who has a friend or relative visiting them in town want to bring them to your property? Right. Is there something there that people want to share and show their friends?
Right.
So do you feel like this type of marketing has a specific target, or one relates to one market more than another?
I don't think it has one specific target. I think we can create moments for all of our customers and all of our segments, but we have to think about where we put most of our efforts. I mean, there is business that we've got to run. So we know that we've got, 20% of our revenue, 80% of our revenue coming from 20% of our database. So if we can create those wonderful moments for that 20%, that gets multiplied, because all we need to do in the whole scheme of what we're doing with casino marketing is try to get our best customers to come one more time, to stay a little longer, and to bring others that are just like them to play. So I think that, but here's the thing, you can still create moments for those customers that are not part of that 20%, that 80%, 20%, 20%. You can get moments. It's about, especially in local properties. I mean, we have regulars and they're not our top players, but they're there every single day. And when somebody remembers their birthday or ask about their grandchild or ask how they're feeling, those are moments. It's not necessarily an event, but it's about how do we create a moment for people that come into our property? Is it the smile? Is it knowing their name? Is it going to you? And I know that you always like to start your meal with the shrimp appetizer. And I say to you, hey, Katie, welcome back. Do you want to start with the shrimp appetizer? Or be able to say, hey, Katie, I know you love the shrimp appetizer, but we've got this brand new dish here that I think you're going to love. Those are like those moments, because that tells you that waitress, that waiter knows me.
Yeah. And those are moments, like you mentioned, that will stick out in your players and your customers' minds, where it makes them draw more and more to you and your brand. So one question I have is, how can small or mid-sized venues and properties compete against the big boys and the vacation destinations and the Live Nation kind of events?
I actually think that the smaller properties have a better advantage, because smaller properties do tend to know their customers a little bit better and a little tighter, and they're part of the community. And I think that they have the advantage in creating those special moments. I know it's very easy to fall into the trap of, well, that casino has more of this. That casino has a new hotel. That casino has a bigger floor. But it's that spirit that you have that's not copyable, right? And I always tell people, it really is about brand. It's about the brand with a big B, not with a small b. It's not the logo. It really is, what about your purpose and what you're doing? Why are you coming to work every day? And it can't be to create revenue, because you can create revenue anywhere. So why you come to work has to be why the customer wants to come see you. There's got to be a match there.
Definitely. And I feel like with some of the smaller casinos and properties, there's also maybe less hoops to kind of have to jump through whenever you're putting something into motion. For example, like a partnership or a sponsor with somebody that's local. Because I've seen some casinos successfully do a local partnership where maybe their property only offers American bar food at it. And then they looked at what their property didn't have and they said, okay, well, we don't have Mexican food. Let's partner with the Mexican restaurant to provide free tacos. So when they're partnering with a business that's well supported, they're also bringing that business's supporters and followers into their casino as well. And I think doing partnerships like that are a really great way to enhance brand as well as create a cool event that now somebody's going to go get a free taco when they go play on the slot machine.
Yeah, local partnerships definitely let you extend the benefits and the rewards you can provide to your guests. I mean, and for small properties, that's a really great way to go. And I think you're right. I think that there are small properties that are much more agile. They can get things done quicker because they don't have as many layers. You know, there are some smaller properties that are perhaps not as agile because they get a little stuck and a little worried about overextending themselves or doing something that's a little out of the box.
Definitely. What is the best way you think marketing can come up with or execute new experiences or new strategies to create these experiences?
Well, I think one of the things that I try to advise is actually to look at what's working already. Because a lot of times we think in terms of month to month and we think, well, we did that last month, so we can't do it this month. But if a mechanism, a way that you do something works and customers are reacting to it positively and you're creating great experience, why wouldn't you try to copy that mechanism? So it's not really necessarily always a game of what do we do that's new and what do we do that's different. But definitely we do have to sprinkle some of that in because we don't want to become stale and we don't want to become boring. And I always say, look at other properties. There are over 900 casinos across this great land of ours. And I mean, just looking at, 4 states over, you can get a lot of ideas of content that they're doing that you're not doing, or at least it sparks a memory. I also think looking outside of the industry isn't something that we can always copy, but I also think they're really good resources to spark ideas.
I completely agree with that. You actually reminded me of a podcast I heard from Gary Vee. I don't know if you ever listened to him, but he talked about looking at other industries, but looking at ones that are targeting similar audiences. So casino might overlap with the travel industry a little bit as far as looking at what airlines, hotel brands, cruise lines, what they're doing with their emails, website, and social media, and getting ideas from that and plugging into your brand and your casino. And I even do that all the time. I'm like, okay, what's American Airlines doing now?
Yeah. And you can also look at what other industries and what other businesses are doing poorly that you may be doing the same thing, only it looks a little differently.
Right. And then try to learn from them. Be like, okay, let's not make that same mistake.
Right.
Marketers can also get new ideas directly from the source, which is their guests. So when casinos are looking at themselves, does your casino have surveys and opportunities for guests to provide new ideas and feedback? Or are casinos getting scared what the feedback might say? You did an article in October about the 7 deadly sins of casino marketing. And sin number 3 was the wrath of ignoring feedback. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I think that, ignoring feedback was a really easy way to put it, but I think sometimes we interpret the feedback the way we want it to. So I always think that it's a good idea to have a third party involved when you're looking at feedback because they have the clarity to be able to see it a little bit different. We don't want to think that our operation is doing poorly. But for instance, I worked with a property and we were getting daily, this was in the buffet days, right? So we're talking 5 years ago, daily complaints about the buffet, about the quality of the food. And I said, so at what point are we going to say this is a problem? They're coming literally daily. And the general manager said, but the buffet is always full. We don't have a problem. And I said, the buffet is always full because that is the only place to eat on the property. It's the only place people could use their points. So it's not that they were choosing to go there because they liked it necessarily. They were choosing to go there because they had points and they might as well use them. And so I think that having a disinterested third party to really kind of filter through feedback is a great idea. I also think that surveys are a really tricky thing. And I know a lot of casinos like to do surveys, and I like to do surveys, but I always advise clients that if you're doing a survey, don't ask them everything under the sun. Ask them the 3 or 4 or 5 questions that are going to get to the heart of what you're intending to do. So that then months later, when you've done or repaired what was wrong or made the change, customers who took that survey can see that their input had some action. Where if you ask 20 questions, you're never going to get to 20 things in the next 3 months. But can you get to one thing? Absolutely. Right. And so I always advise do smaller, shorter surveys periodically throughout the year. And the other thing is focus groups, because I think that surveys where you check the boxes and then, there's this tendency for people to pick the middle a lot of times. Well, you don't really hate it and you don't really love it. I'm okay. So I'm going to pick the middle. And that doesn't really give you great insights or actionable insights. I think a really good thing is focus groups, because properly trained moderators for focus groups can really get to the heart of things in the discussion. You hear language and you hear the words and you start to realize, oh, now I know what's going on. So I always advise that. I know it's not an inexpensive process to do focus groups, but I think that as marketers, we should be doing focus groups at least annually, if not more often. But then you can also do small informal focus groups. Have a VIP dinner. Have the GM invite 5, 6 customers and just sit at a table and just chat. He's got a list of questions he wants to ask, right?
I think that's great advice. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I know you already mentioned that surveys can be a little bit tricky. You mentioned that casinos may not even have the time and resources to put some of this stuff together. And then you also mentioned that sometimes they're just not aware and they need a third-party feedback. Are there any other reasons you can think of why some casinos ignore feedback?
I mean, sometimes they just don't have the funds to fix, FF&E problems or those kinds of things. And so, if you're going to ask a customer what's wrong, but you don't have the money to fix it, maybe you're better off not asking. So there's a couple of reasons why why you may not necessarily do research. Sometimes we just don't want to hear it. And sometimes there are bigger things on our list that have to get done. And that's just not one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I always say, as casino marketers, our job is to advocate for the customer and for their experience. And we've always got to be mindful of that.
100%. And I'm sure whenever you do your trainings, you emphasize these factors a lot as well. And speaking of trainings, I'd be dumb not to get into the subject of branding with you, since that is one of your many expertise that you've trained and helped casinos with. So we mentioned using partnerships earlier on in the interview. So I'd like to ask, how do you choose the right outside partners and sponsors to help build a casino brand? Or in other words, what can marketers do to ensure a successful partnership for the sake of the brand?
Are you talking about a brand project or
It could be a project, or I'm thinking as a whole though, like it could be short-term partnerships or long-term partnerships.
So I think that with any partnership, right, the key is partnership, and it's not a vendor. So I think that one of the things that both parties need to do is be open, be honest. There's got to be really great communication, because they don't know your brand, you don't know their brand, and they've got to figure it out in this shortened timeline for this event or this moment to happen with this partner. And I think that one of the things that I usually see that become problems are just not communicating, or thinking that somebody's going to read your mind. Reading the mind is a very big sin. And I think that that's part of the process. And I think that if you're going to allow somebody to take your brand forward into another area, because they're going to be doing something on site that carries your brand, they really have to understand your brand and your brand purpose beyond the graphic standards. A lot of times we'll give people graphic standards and say, here's our logo, don't make it bigger, don't make it smaller, don't change the colors, don't stretch it, don't skew it, but we don't really tell them, here's what we're trying to do. Here's the reason we're here. And I think that's important that we understand from the partner's perspective too, why they think this is a good partnership. And I think those communications can also let us know whether it's going to be a good partnership or not. Just because it's a big marquee doesn't necessarily mean it's a great partnership.
Yeah, I agree. I think making sure that whoever you're partnered with is kind of matching your tone. And yeah, I would just narrow it down to your tone, and your vibe is very important. What is a good starting point for marketers who want to invest more into their brand building? What advice would you give them?
Always start with the foundation. Why? You have to really understand why your operation lives the way it is and what it's intended to do. And like I said, it can't just be about revenue. You know, I always say for tribes, it's such an easy thing for Native American operations to really kind of connect to the tribe and the mission of the tribe to be coexisting with the mission of the property. I think that for commercial operators, though, it still is important, because for commercial operators, a lot of the why exists in the markets that we are operating in. Why is that property there? And again, it can't be just because we want to create money, because everybody wants to create money. We have to create a reason for people to choose us. And I think that's always where you have to start. Whenever we start any kind of brand standards project, I'm actually working on developing a brand standards virtual training that people can self-pace through. And the first part of it is the foundation, your mission, your vision, your purpose. Why is it existing?
Definitely. Yeah. And I'd also want to add to people that are creating their brands, or maybe they're already been in execution of different strategies that they've put in place, but just to keep in mind that the environment can also impact your brand, and staying educated about what's going on within, your local community, your state, or nationwide. When you have awareness of what's going on, you can utilize it as an opportunity to enhance your brand, whether it's a trend or just a current happening. But when you miss moments like those, it could be missed opportunities.
Right. I agree.
And yeah, so don't be afraid to adjust according to those outside factors, and staying flexible as well.
Well, I always say brand standards are really kind of guide. They just sort of keep us in check, but they're not really meant to be hard, fast, concrete. You can't go anywhere else. And that's the notion of working with brands that have people coming through the doors every single day. You've got to just live it. You have to breathe it. It's got to evolve, and it has to grow with your company, with your community, and your purpose has to adjust.
Yeah. And I think as it evolves, your operations would be affected as well if you're doing it right. I believe you discussed in our last interview we did with you 4+ years ago, just the relationship that HR and marketing should have together. Yeah. And so we mentioned before how experience marketing can enhance the brand, but what do marketers need to do to set that brand apart?
Well, I think that, again, we tend to look at competitors, and very often we try to me too it, and you can't do that. if your brand is going to stand apart. Differentiation is what makes people choose you over the others. And in most of our markets, a lot of markets have properties that are next door to each other. And I don't mean just Las Vegas. I mean, we were talking about Black Hawk, Colorado this morning. You know, you can start at the front of Black Hawk and literally walk through every casino by the end of the day in Black Hawk and spend a good amount of time in each one experiencing them. But, you know, the trick is always, who's going to be the first stop? Where are you going to go first, right? Why do people choose you to go there first? And if it's because you gave them $20 in free play and everybody else gave them $10, well, sure, they'll pick you first. But the minute your free play goes down to 10, why are they going to choose you first? And it's always got to be about, why would people choose to come here? Why wouldn't they go someplace else? I mean, retail does this all the time, right? Especially in supermarkets. Why do you go to one supermarket over the other? Usually it's because of pricing. They're very much a commodity, but every once in a while, there's a different grocery experience where it creates an experience and people are willing to pay a few cents more for each of those items, which, by the way, adds up. Because they want the experience, because it's a different kind of experience for them.
Definitely. And I think that when you started to bring up retail, I'm a Shark Tank nerd. And so I love how people come up with their new ideas that they come up with. And it's always typically somebody creating a business from something that
they needed.
Was fitting a need. Yes, yeah. Exactly. Rather than a dollar. It was just something they needed. So I think we could tie that into other industries as well. Right. It's like creating something that fits a need rather than a dollar. I would say if someone needs to see an example, to look at your career of accomplishments, I think it's great that you're sharing your knowledge and helping others. I've seen you at almost all the casino marketing conferences that I've attended. So I wanted to ask a little bit about conference marketing. How do you make the most of conferences as an attendee or as a vendor?
You know, it's funny. Because I was looking back at G2E, at this last G2E, where I did something very different, in that every other year before then, I was always trying to book appointments. You know, I'm going to be there for 4 days. Hey, can you meet with me? Hey, you know, we're going to be doing this. And so there was always some reason that I wanted to give people to make time for me. And this year, I just was tapped out, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go in. I've got 2 sessions that I'm going to do. I'm going to do the best I can at those sessions and really kind of share my knowledge and my opinion. And, you know, hopefully people will be attracted to it. And I actually have got a few contracts out of that, which was just amazing to me. But the conversations that I had with people there were so much richer and so much better. In that I got to know them a little bit more. And the thing that I try to do is that I've always said I couldn't be another agency, because I didn't want to have the big contract that I got, you know, 10 grand a month to do your creative, and then, you know, come 2 or 3 years later, somebody at the property feels they're paying too much, or I feel like you're being annoying because you're always making changes to the things that I'm doing. I wanted to be a partner with properties, and being a partner means that I have to get to know them before I can actually become a paid vendor. And I think that that's sort of what makes it a little bit better for me. And I think that that's what I try to do. I try to be on the dais. So I do submit sessions because I do want that opportunity to share my knowledge. And then with that, I think that I'm just sort of leveraging into that at this point of my life and my business.
So taking your experience, what do you think that like big conferences like G2E could do better to impact more businesses and casinos that are attending?
Oh my God, I think they do so much at especially a conference like G2E, because they really do provide an extraordinary wealth and breadth of topics on an education front. And they more recently have added so much more education. You know, you've got the innovation lab where they're doing like these smaller 15-second like punches into a topic, and then they still managing the the hour, 45-minute, hour-long sessions. And they added those interactive workshops now on Thursday. So I think that they're providing a lot of ways through the education, through the trade show. I don't know what else they could do that they're not doing right now. They're even hosting awards and trying to create more celebration points at G2E, which I think makes people become much more engaged. There's a lot of new, I know that Native Nation Events did a new casino marketing executive event I can't remember when, but they did it this year. It was their very first one. I spoke to a lot of people that were there and they really enjoyed it. They had a lot of one-on-one conversations with people. And I think that that's the trick, right? It's trying to find ways that more people could have these one-on-one conversations and learn more about each other.
Definitely. Well, speaking of education, intimate conversations, learning more, let's get into the subject that I really want to talk about, which is your Casino Marketing Bootcamp. So tell us about this upcoming Casino Marketing Bootcamp. And what is it, where, when?
So the next bootcamp is actually our signature event, which happens in New Orleans in the spring. So this year it's going to be March 24th, 25th, and 26th. And we're going to be right in the French Quarter this year, which is fun for the attendees. It is, so the signature one is a little bit different than our others. Our others are 2 days. Signature is 3-day. All of our sessions are really carefully curated because the goal for the events is always to have actionable skills and strategies. We want people to be able to go back and immediately start using the new skills or strategies. The reason that we started Casino Marketing Bootcamp was because I had attended the Casino Marketing and Technology Conference years ago. So this was in 2018. And one of the people that was also speaking said to me, gosh, I do all this work to put this session together, and then I never really know what happens after the conference. And I said, oh, I know exactly what happens, because I was a casino employee going to this conference as well. I said, you go to all the sessions and you take a million notes because everybody's so smart. Everybody's got great ideas. You're taking pictures of the slides. I mean, you've been there. You've done it yourself, I'm sure. And then what happens is that you go back to the property. You've been gone for 3, 4, maybe 5 days, depending on where it was and what the travel was like. And you get back and you've got ads to approve and code grids to look at and customer complaints and schedules to do. And that notebook with all your ideas gets put on your desk while you tackle everything that you didn't catch up on. And little by little, everything gets put on top of that notebook. And then you don't really look at it again until you clean off your desk. And that's the tragedy, right? Because we do learn so much at those conferences. I mean, there isn't one that I would say don't go to because you're not learning anything, because you learn at all of them. And so what I wanted to do with Bootcamp was actually create a different kind of session. And so what we've done is for boot camps, we actually have pre-arrival assignments. So we actually send people assignments beforehand. It panics them a little. It's always surprising to me because I'm like, it's not something you're going to get graded on. It's just for you to get ready so that we can all like jump into the conversations. And then each of the sessions is about 90 minutes. Some of them are 2 hours. And we've got exercises that we break off into groups to do during the session. So it becomes something that you've done now. It's not just that you're listening to something, you've done it. And then we also keep boot camp really small. So that's the bad business part of me is that boot camp is too small. So there's not a lot of margin there, but it really is a great event. And so we stick to like 30 or so attendees. So it's not a lot. So you don't get lost and you don't feel like you're in a room of 500 people and you're afraid to raise your hand and ask that dumb question, because we've all had them. We've all sat in the back of the room going, I want to ask this question, but I'm gonna look like an idiot if I do, right? Because nobody else is asking this question. Everybody else is asking that question. They're just not raising their hands. But with 30 people, nobody gets lost in the group. And our sessions are so much, they're really kind of fun. And the interactive portion of it, that all the coaches end up like participating with the groups, and they go from group to group and help them out with whatever project they're working on, even if it's not what they're there to speak about. Because we all have so much experience and so much knowledge. It's not just brand. It's not just loyalty. It's not just database. And so we can all help out. So that makes it a little bit different. It's just, the vibe is just very different.
I love that. So last interview we did with you was 4+ years ago, and you had 2 casino marketing boot camps completed at that time, and you had your 3rd coming up. So now 4+ years later, how has it developed or evolved since the 1st and 2nd one to this next one?
I think that probably we added the 3rd day in New Orleans. We end New Orleans on the 3rd day with something I like to call the card Shark Tank, where you have to make presentations to a panel of general managers, which is really interesting because it's a skill that we don't really get to stretch very much at our own properties, but it's a very valuable skill when you can communicate at an executive level and have the numbers and have the information to get your idea approved. So we've added that. And then our Midwest one, I think this year was the year that it got like super well defined. And so our Midwest one, we do in the middle of the year. And that one really is all about planning the next year. We work on calendars, we work on budgets. It's 2 days of just like massive planning your calendars. And then our Northwest one is still going strong. I think next year we're going to take that one and focus it a little tighter and probably just do all digital marketing, which is a really great space because it's changing so much. And it's still areas that we don't all understand really well.
I like that you guys have different regions for each of these. And the Midwest one is so smart to have just 2 days dedicated to planning things out, because that is so time consuming. And if you don't take the time to do that, you can get so unorganized and so overwhelmed by what needs to happen and when it needs to happen.
Yeah. The other thing too with that one is because, as I said, they're small groups. They really kind of create this community of casino marketers. And that's not something that you see a lot, a community of casino marketers. And they share so many ideas and so many thoughts that it's so easy to get new things for your calendar. Because that's the thing when you're sitting there at the end of the year trying to build your calendar, what am I going to do that's different? Well, when you have, 5 or 6 other properties there, and one of them's doing this event and the other one's doing that event and that one's doing that one, and you hear about it and you're like, oh, tell me more about that one. All of a sudden now you've got a new program.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned digital marketing in the Northwest. For this conference coming up in New Orleans, what are some of the confirmed topics this year? And can you describe them a little bit for us?
So I've got most of them confirmed. We're starting with a session that we're playfully calling Do This, Not That, which is going to be really a lot of fun, best practices from around the country. We're doing, interestingly, because I don't think that anybody would expect this, but we're doing a session on Microsoft Office tools. Because we work in Microsoft Office all day, every day. And there's so many tricks that could make us more efficient that we don't know. So we're going to actually do a session on that. So not exactly casino marketing, but definitely something that's helpful. We're doing a session on building your roadmap for your app. So really thinking through, what does your app need? What should you be developing? Because too many of the properties will get into an app and then they don't really have a thought about, they're taking the vendors' ideas and taking them and buying them. They're really good ideas, but then they can't execute against them. And so, the worst thing that happens when you buy technology is that at the end of the year, you're like, I spent all this money and it's not really doing me any good. It's because there was really never a big thought into how this was going to work. So creating that roadmap is going to be really important. We're going to definitely do a session on promotions and events. We're going to probably do a session on entertainment. We're doing a session on change management, which is, again, another strategic kind of piece of the puzzle that happens to us all. but managing change is the thing that we never get trained on. And that's such an important part of the puzzle, especially if you're leading a team. We're also doing data visualization, which I love and I'm really excited about. So lots of really good stuff.
Is the data visualization, is that the one you're most excited to talk or most excited about? Or is there a different one that you're like, this is my favorite?
They're like my babies. I love them all. I'm not going to pick a favorite because these coaches are going to get on me. They're all really exciting. We work all together with these sessions. And like I said, try to develop something that's super interactive that people can use very well, and, I try to make sure that there's kind of a balance of, strategic tools, technical knowledge, and then, something that's more discovery. So there's kind of a mix of things.
I think it's super exciting. And I would be able to talk to you probably for hours about it if we could, but we are coming up close to time. So I wanted to ask you real quick, what's next that people should look at from you? Any cool posts coming out or announcements that you have that we should look out for?
Well, I am working on a post on how to train your team internally. Training is a passion of mine. Of course, I'll be doing the trends that I see for 2025 at the beginning of the year. Maybe some New Year's resolutions at the end of this year. But I'm really kind of going to stay focused on that brand essence for this. I think that I also may do a little e-guide for email marketing. We just did our webinar series for Casino Marketing Bootcamp. We do a webinar series each year. And this last year we did it on email marketing. And so I was looking at all the content and I thought, maybe this makes like a nice little e-guide, something small that people can just download and use. But we've also been creating a series of downloadable tools that I call the Casino Marketing Toolkit Collection. And we've got about 7 different tools in there already this year. And so hopefully put a few more in next year. I always like to get tips from casino marketers. What do they need? What are they looking for? We do the same thing when we do the programming for bootcamp. What are the sessions that you want to listen to and that you want to learn more about?
So we've got your toolkit, we've got your trends coming out, an e-guide, much more. We'll probably just have to do another interview in the future. Maybe once your trends announcement gets posted, we can do another interview and kind of walk through some of those and talk about 2025 more. But if marketers want to learn more about Casino Marketing Bootcamp or Carcamo and Associates, where should they go?
Well, you can definitely find me on LinkedIn. But the website's casinomarketingbootcamp.com and jcarcamoassociates.com. Have lots of information.
Awesome. Well, you heard it. That's where you need to go to learn more, to get with Julia, learn how to enhance your casino's brand. Thank you so much for taking out this time to speak with me and dive deeper into all these things about marketing. I learned so much. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it, Katie.
Bye.
Bye.